this content that we're producing in this to be valuable, if we decide to make next steps and go into some key action items and we build a project out of this, now we have this meeting, this board meeting, if you will, captured. And we can use the insights and perspectives and wisdom coming from each of you to propel our mission forward. All right? Coach Russ, you got the floor.
Well, thank you, Sydney. And I know Alex and Greg and Donna and a few of you, but I really don't know most of you. In fact, I didn't know Donna, Sydney, and Alex, and Greg until the pandemic hit. So it's a great honor. I'm grateful to be a part of this distinguished group, and quite frankly, social media and social networking has kept me focused and on the ball since March 17th, when our schools closed in California. That was my last day at school, St. Patrick's Day, and that was the last time I said goodbye to the kids, not knowing if we would be back this school year or not. And as a result, in California, the school year has been terminated until next August, when we hope to start the next 2021 school year. So it's a great privilege and honor, and thank you, Sydney, for having me, and the friendships we've developed have been amazing. And speaking of relationships and friendships, that's what we need for our children to continue to keep them connected. You know, they have usually a great relationship with their teachers in the classroom, and at the same time now they're divided from that opportunity, and they're hurting. They're in a different kind of a role, and you know, I tell kids, and we tell kids at our school, you know, you stay focused, continue to read, you know, follow your teacher's instructions, try and get the best reading scores and math scores you can. And my kids at our school were doing really well. We're really blessed to have some great kids. However, I was talking to a sixth grade girl just as she drove through to pick up a 2-week packet at our elementary school yesterday morning. And she said she's not going to bed on time. She's staying up late. She's on social media. And I could tell from the look on her face, she's not as focused as she needs to be. Now, some parents are working, they're essential workers. Some parents are unemployed, and it looks like they will be for some time still, at least another month here in California. So there's a lot of chaos in the homes, and our students are the ones that are not really sure where things are going. They're somewhat survivors, victims of their circumstances. And so I looked at this project, this initiative through Social Impact Network and Real Impact Solutions as an opportunity to pool our energy and resources and great thoughts and vision so that we could figure out how to make an ability, a resource for schools across the globe, not just here in the United States, but around the world, as Grace is evident in. And who is that from South America? Someone else is on the line. Anyway.
Right.
So it's just wonderful to be here. I am very passionate about this initiative. Just a little bit quick background on me. I've been a mental health professional and expert for 30 years. And I'm an educator and have been teaching both from the kindergarten level up through college, university here locally in Bakersfield. So I'm also a sports coach, as Scott and I were talking about before, since I was 17 years old, and I'm a few years older than that now. So, but that coaching has allowed me, along with the counseling as a family therapist, has allowed me to connect with kids and engage with kids so that I can smooth the communications so that they can open up and tell me what's going on in their lives. And now I'm realizing that we can do this globally. We've got a pilot project going on in Texas with Donna Lopez, who's up with us today. And we're really starting to empower and engage students, but they're struggling. And this is an opportunity for us to impact their lives. Now, we know their needs are apparent. You know, some of them are having trouble with just getting food and housing. And, you know, we know that you cannot grow and focus on your studies if your very basic needs aren't met. Some of you might be familiar with Abraham Maslow's levels of hierarchy for reaching self-actualization. We'll probably post that later in a later time. But basically, our goal with this project is to reduce the digital divide. If we can help kids have access to resources so that we can get them resources, whatever they need, then we're going to provide the foundation of their hierarchy of needs so that then maybe they can grow into focusing and having an opportunity to realize they have potential, power, opportunity to succeed in their schools and in their lives. So, maybe our organization that we're creating today, this groundbreaking effort that Sydney and Alex and Greg have initiated, maybe this ends up being a clearinghouse for identifying students and families' needs across the country that are not connected with the internet and do not have that are in that division that I'm going blank on the term I'm trying to use. I was talking to a fellow, the digital divide. That's a concept that I've been hearing this today, the digital divide. And so if we can reduce that, I think we are going to give our students a fighting chance to be successful. And, what better place to be? And thank you for putting up with me.
Thank you so much, Coach Russ. I'm gonna go ahead and let Scott, as a moderator, go ahead and direct the discussion.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Coach. We have 26 people joining us tonight, which is really a great tribute to all of you. So thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening for this Social Impact Network. I want to start off this evening with a question. And as Sydney was saying, we will swing this around the board here. We're asking that you please keep your comments to no more than 2 or 3 minutes so that everyone has a opportunity to speak. But I'm sure all of you, we've all been at meetings where we walk away from the meeting and say, what just happened? Or what are our next steps? And why did I do this? So tonight, what we're going to do before 15 minutes or so before we expect to close out the program, we're going to swing it around like a lightning round, and we're going to solicit thoughts on what next action steps should be from this discussion this evening. So everyone should walk away with a feeling that they had an opportunity to contribute, and they also had an opportunity to walk away with a thought about what are we going to do next? What is our action plan? So again, certainly appreciate everybody being here this evening. So first question we're starting off with tonight is, how can we ensure that every child has equitable access to online learning? And then with that, because that's certainly been very key these last few weeks, but with that is, it could involve, the question or your response could involve, how does a child have the ability to connect? And also, how does a child have a good place to be able to work, or how do they create a cohesive environment in their home to be able to do their work while online? So with that, I'm going to start, if I may have the pleasure, with Donna. And I think we need to unmute Donna. There we go.
I don't know if I'm the right person to start with.
Of course you are.
Well, I think right now I'm looking at it in according to our school. Okay. If we were to start at our campus and look at the student body and the environment that they live, I think putting aside the digital part, my focus is what environment are they living in? Because it doesn't matter if they have all the technology that we could give them, if their environment is not a place that is Is it conducive to learning? They're not going to do it. Doesn't matter how much technology they have. And I can give you a brief example. I'm looking for your timer here.
You're good.
A brief example would be right after I got off a previous Zoom meeting, I had to run some food to a family of 6 living in a horrible condition in a motel, a 1-bedroom motel. And this student that I service doesn't have any technology. They don't know where their food is coming from or when. And this is what he has to live with day by day. And so the school is providing a laptop to him next week. But if his environment is not, if it's like this, there's no way he's going to be successful anyways in that place. So I think, I don't know how it is across the country, and I can't believe that this is just one case. I believe this is in many, many places. And whether they have technology or not, if you don't have that environment right, then that's not going to work. So in a situation with this pandemic, I don't know what the answer would be. And there are far more experts here on this panel here that probably could share some better insight than I can. But that's coming from my perspective, what I see on a daily basis with the kids that I work with.
That's beautiful, Donna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna. I'm going
Thank
to,
you. Thank you. I feel sick now.
That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
I want to turn the conversation over to Alex for his thoughts, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Scott. Donna, when you touched on everything except for technology, my main area of expertise is technology. I think that kids right now are facing a very, very difficult time in a couple of key areas, one of which being their home environment, where they are now having to study and they were not having to do so before. They had an escape from that environment and being able to go to school. The second of which being technology, the access to being able to access your classroom online and to get the same education that your peers are getting in tandem with them. And then the third is support. I think that that's going to be a major key to success here, is making sure that these kids have a support network and that they have what they need to make sure that their voices are heard, their needs are met, and they feel safe and comfortable to do so. Now, speaking on technology, one of the best areas that we can leverage, I would think, is Google for Education and Chromebooks. I'm a Google for Education partner, actually, so that's where it comes in. And so we work with Google to bring education to the educators on how to best use their products and facilitate online learning, and also to the students on how to use Google for Education, how to use Google applications in general, how to use Chromebooks in order to further their learning experience. Because when we start to consider some bigger issues of like state testing, for example, how will kids be able to do state testing when they are in a home-based environment? Well, Chromebooks have kiosk mode, for example, which will lock everything else except for that test, enabling them to focus on that. Will they even be able to focus on it, though, if they don't have that safe environment to be able to do so? Or if they're having to teach their kids, or they're not their kids, kids are teaching their brothers and their sisters how to do school. This is an opportunity to create student leaders and empower the youth to let them know that they have a voice and that they can make a difference in the lives of their peers, so that when we give them the technology that they need and the education with that technology to empower them to use it, and then we build a safe and secure environment for them to actually be able to learn and grow, we're going to enable these students to have as little disruption as possible to their typical learning environment, which we need to closely match as we possibly can. That's really all I've got.
Thank you, Alex. To be mindful of this person's time, Grace, if you can hear me, if you'd be kind enough to add your thoughts. Can you hear me, Grace?
I don't see her audio indicator
just
on
see
here.
the picture. So with that, I'm going to swing over to Darnell. if you'd be kind to join us for your thoughts.
I would say, as a high school administrator myself in the Plainfield, Illinois area, my heart goes out to the parents right now. You know, myself and my wife are two college educated, master's degrees, MBAs, and we're struggling, you know? So I think sometimes we make this overarching theme that maybe if you're from low income or you lack access, then you're the only one struggling. But I think a lot of people, depending on your profession, now there's stress in the home holistically that wasn't there before. So how do we come alongside all parents and provide support in a safe place to be vulnerable and say, hey, I know everybody assumes I'm doing well, but we're not doing well. And how can the school systems come alongside all parents, provide that safe format when many of us are, you know, locked down and shut in our houses? So yes, technology needs to get to people. We're currently a district that's not one-to-one, so we're wrestling through what that looks like even prior to this pandemic. But going forward, how do we equip parents to feel confident and feel safe and feel like they can give their kid the best environment and the best opportunity possible? Many parents want to do their best, but sometimes one parent's best is not the same as another parent's best. So, and that's already creating an unequal environment for kids going forward. So how do we get them the technology they need? Yes, that's important. But how do we equip and provide the resources parents need as we finish up this year, over the summer and going into the fall, so that everybody comes back on as equal playing field as possible?
That's beautiful. Wow.
Darnell, thank you.
Thank you
that.
so much, Darnell.
Thank you. Thank you. I want
No
to
problem.
swing over to Leo, coming to us from Houston, and he has a grade school child. So if you'd be so kind enough, please, 2 or 3 minutes, your thoughts.
Absolutely. How's everybody doing? So, yes, my grade school child is 10. Interestingly, we've been homeschooling her since the very beginning. So we've kind of had a little bit of a head start on some of our other families out there, which we certainly try to be of as much support as we can to those who we're connected to. And the one thing that I'll say, after everything that I've already heard is, one of the things that you touched on, Sydney, is that we don't know how bad this thing is going to get. And as much as, we want to have the most ideal situations and environments, we may not be able to really provide that in the way that we would like to. So what do you do in situations like that? And that touches on the very essence of the book that I wrote, and Scott has actually read it, called The 2 Keys for Highly Exceptional Teams, which focuses on clear expectations so that there can be effective taking of responsibility. And when you have a situation that's ideal, a lot of times that seems very easy. But how do you do that when your circumstances are not the most ideal, but there's still an expectation that is set for you? Well, you've got to be able to make some shifts in your mindset. You've got to be able to have some clarity of what it is that's most important. Your priorities have to be changed. So there's going to be a lot of need to really help people understand, hey, what is it that's expected of me, so that I can not only have clarity about it, but commit to it so that I can take responsibility and deliver upon that expectation. That's my piece.
All right. Thank you, Leo. Very nice. Certainly appreciate it. Can I now ask Nancy to please join us with her thoughts?
Hi, thank you so much. Let's see, where do I start? I'm the executive director of a private international school without walls. We don't exist in a brick and mortar. We've been around for 35 years. We're accredited by Middle States, the Learning Community International. We have students across the United States and in other countries, Indonesia, Korea. And Manfred Smith is on here. I don't see his visual. He's actually the founder and principal director. He was also very instrumental in drafting the laws for homeschooling in the state of Maryland in the late 70s and early 80s. He was a public school teacher for 32 years, middle school, Tacoma Park in Maryland. And we're also an umbrella group, and Leo probably is familiar with what an umbrella group is. And so we're authorized by the state to oversee homeschoolers. But what is really our philosophy is active learning and engagement. Prior to technology, prior to 2007, we were visiting people and providing support. And thinking about learning a very different way. The whole world can be used as the classroom. And we have trained advisors that assist the parents and oversee the learning, specifically identifying what their interests are, what their learning styles and preferences are, and create a learning plan, and then oversee that with our advisors through technology now. That's how we use the technology as a leverage, as opposed to just delivering online education. We have a gentleman named Professor Skip Downing, and he's responsible for creating the OnCourse. I don't know if some of the higher ed people know about OnCourse. It's taught in about 500 colleges and universities across the country. And he talks a lot about active learning and engagement. There are some constraints to online education with active learning and engagement. So whatever model, whether you're homeschooling, private school, public school, we really need to talk about that pedagogy and kind of turn it on its side if we're going to move into the 21st century.
Nancy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do want to point out to everyone that there is a chat feature. If you'd like to send any notes to either the group or an individual, please take advantage of that. I'm very pleased to welcome, we've corresponded a bit, but have not spoken yet, but Tomikia, I want to make sure you heard our question for this evening. Need your audio. Are you unmuted?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Maybe not. She's not set up. She's not ready yet. Go move to the next.
Sure. So with that, I'd like to introduce Carrie Martin, and please share with us your thoughts.
Thank you. It's really nice to meet everybody and be here. I actually, when I thought about this question, I kind of zeroed in on the every child. I'm not a teacher, not a parent as well. When I think about every child, I'm not coming at it from, I am part of the middle class, but I don't really have a middle class perspective on this. I'm thinking about kids who are underserved, whose parents are homeless in homeless shelters. And when I think about these kids, they don't have computers, they don't have internet access. So if we're really going to be thinking about every child having access to online learning, I think we have to really go back to the basics here and think about how are we going to get these kids who in my mind are most vulnerable, who are most at risk of not making anything of their lives, have access to the internet. Do we go to the cable companies and ask them to give it? Do we, as someone else mentioned before, go to Google, go to Larry Ellison? Because for me, at the end of the day, this is a fundraising question. And if we're really going to do something about this, we have to come together as a group, build a coalition of kindred spirits, and go after diversified fundraising streams to make a difference. And I think we have to really think about this for every child and not sort of impose our middle class values about how we want our children to be schooled online. That's kind of my thoughts.
Very well said.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Rob, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. Please share with us your thoughts.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being on this call. You know, I've served the last couple decades in the public school system, served on boards. My wife and I started a nonprofit to help children become more emotionally intelligent, healthy, and fit, and also include the parents. And the reason why we include the parents is because, as Alex and a lot of the great speakers on the call talked about, was the environment. And honestly, if we're going to do anything that's going to be effective, it will be those three things. It'll be the environment, it'll be the technology, and it will be the support. And I think the support is the biggest area, because support goes to the beginning, the genesis, where you evaluate each circumstance. And if you have that type of connectivity where you can evaluate the circumstances in regards to technology, the lack of internet, Nancy from the Learning Community International, they have a phenomenal system where they keep the children and the parents engaged in different activities, and they're also coaching the parents. They're engaging with the parents. And I think that's a primary thing that's going to help to make this successful and sustainable, is making sure that there's support for the family, in the beginning, in the middle, and through the end. And that's how our program, we gained the most traction, I believe, because of that. So I think this has a lot of potential. And if those three areas, the environment, the technology, and the support, if we continue to keep building upon that, obviously there's more subdivisions to those areas. But I think by doing that and having these deep discussions, we'll definitely gain some traction. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Our next speaker is
No, Grace is on.
overseas, so I want to make sure he gets a chance because it's late where he is. So Zayed, welcome, and please share with us your thought.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, everybody. I just turned on my camera. We're having issues with the connectivity here, but this is my COVID look now. My friends before me brought up a lot of good subjects. I'm a technology man, so I'm going to talk a little bit about technology. Connectivity. I was shocked to, a few days ago, Sydney posted something about a lot of kids don't have connectivity to e-learning, and my thoughts on that is really shame on the big companies for not making that happen, for not contributing. So I think they need to step up. One thing that concerns me the most is, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm sure we have experts here on the call, but one thing that concerns me is the mental health of these kids. Now that they're having to stay home, their whole life is disrupted. How can we, from a technology point of view, how can I sense that? How can I make that available, that information available about, for instance, raise an alarm on one kid or a bunch of kids who are really need to vent out or need to confide in somebody before they blow up or before they do something really stupid, you know? How can technology help here to identify those kids and basically just get them the help they need? So I'm really worried about that, you know. Also, again, I'm worried about the kids are having to be online, you know, a lot more now, which also makes them more vulnerable to bad people. You know, I mean, there are bad people out on the net, and you know, we have to really look into that and protect those kids. And that's really all I have to say tonight.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ziad.
Thank you for the contribution. also coming to us from a great distance, Dimitri, please share with us your thoughts as well.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I just want to speak from a personal point. I come from a family where my mother was at 19. She had an associate's, equivalent of an associate's, teaching elementary kids. At one point, she had 100 students in one classroom, because where we grew up in the little town, it was the only school available, and she had to teach actually 100 children at one point. And it was incredible when she told me the story, because, you know, it just showed that at the time it was just, the means weren't there. So, my mother at 26, she received a master's degree from the best university here, University of San Carlos here in Guatemala. And she actually studied pedagogy. She has a master's in pedagogy, which focuses exactly on teaching how to teach children. And I learned a lot of amazing things, how children absorb the information. And I think that now I'm going to speak a little bit as a computer scientist. Now, I don't have the solution for how to give access to the children as an internet or computers, but I want to go a little further than that. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that we also have a lot. This is the best chance in history for us to actually I guess I would say, correct some of the content that we have been teaching children, or the lockout. For example, I believe that in our systems, we have not taught children, for example, time management, conflict resolution. We haven't taught them critical thinking, networking, social aspects, and we are talking from kindergarten all the way to high school. And I just remember in the U.S. when I graduated high school, I was not ready for college. I was not ready for work. I was not ready for society. So I think we should also not only talk about the connectivity and the availability, because again, when we find that solution will be great, but also to think about what we're going to teach. And remember, not everybody learns the same way. And this is something that I believe that we got to remember. Everybody learns in a different way. So I think it's also a great time for us to be able to learn how children learn in personalize this teaching. And you know, we have so many platforms right now, like Khan Academy and such, where children, if they need to go back over and over, they don't need to worry about the teacher not going over it again. Remember, one of the worst things I had as a subject was math, not because I wasn't good, but because they weren't good enough teachers. So I think it's a great time to look into those alternatives. I believe that the most important thing we can teach children is how to learn. And that's something that I don't think was ever addressed in school. We just went to school and hopefully we did okay. And not only that, but we gotta not just look at the negative aspects, but we gotta look at the fact that the children that are going to be learning at home, also it's a more, many times it's going to be a more safe environment where they don't need to worry about, like Sydney and I were, you know, we were raised in places where there were gang members and crime and violence, and we weren't able to also.
That's a good one. Let me pause you right there, because I think we can move into that. But let's get to the next person. We're gonna come back around, because that's a very good point.
Grace, can you hear us at this point?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Please share with us your thoughts about tonight's question.
Okay, at some point I went missing. I had a problem with my connections, so I didn't get the question correctly. But from the sharing.
So the question is, how can we ensure that every child has equitable access to online learning?
Okay, I know it's a good point there, but the problem is there are kids, like from my community, there are some kids who cannot access the Wi-Fi or these gadgets that we use. So the problem is, how can they learn at home? How can they learn at home? Another question is, how can we help them? Because they are not, they already don't know how to use the gadgets. If they don't know how to use them. So how can we help again? So right there, I don't have any answer for it right now. It's something that has been bothering me for quite some time. Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe if something can help.
No, that's a great point. And actually, you're actually expanding on something that's critical to understand that learning actually happens in the home, right? And despite what happens at school, your learning actually happens in the home because that's actually where you're going to have moments of solitude and reflection. That's why they give you homework so that you can take it home and actually use it in a practical sense. So any real learning is going to be soaked up in your home, and it's going to be soaked up in the activities that you do in your day-to-day life.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Grace. Tomikia.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, Grace.
Can you hear us, Tomikia?
I can.
Oh, welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Please share with us your thoughts.
So I'm like, you all have to forgive me because I'm not that good at all this.
Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Just go ahead. Just go ahead and just make it happen. Don't worry about that.
So I don't have like a background as far as schooling and education. However, I am dealing with this firsthand because I have two kids. I have a 15-year-old and I have a 6-year-old. My 6-year-old, he was recently diagnosed with ADHD, like right before they stopped school. So before they could get his 504 in and all this good stuff at school, they stopped school for the rest of the year. So my concern is like when he starts school in August, if they go back to school in August, what's going to happen? Because nothing was in place before he got out of school this school year. My daughter, I'm not so concerned about. She pretty much does her own thing. But my son, on the other hand, yeah, that it concerns me. It wasn't going great before school stopped with school. And so, yeah, as a parent dealing with this, I don't know how to feel about it. I'm anxious.
So Tamika, can I ask you a question? And this is great. I'm glad you brought this up because it's really great question. So while he's out of school and while he's at home, while you guys are at home, do you think there's a way you can actually bend the curve in what the current state is, in terms of the education quality that he received there, in terms of his ability to learn more effectively by being home with you? Is there a way you can bend that curve, empower him in a way that it can actually maybe enforce his own level of learning, self-learning?
I think so.
Okay.
And I'm trying to, but because I don't know, there can be a lot of negative stigma around children with behavioral issues. They treat it, I know in school, they try to treat it as a discipline thing, and it's not. It's about, it's his behavior. It's all about how he learns. When he can't sit still, it's not that he cannot learn, it's that you might have to tailor it a different way on how you teach him. So that's what I'm trying to do at home. I'm trying to make sure that I get him on a good schedule where, okay, I know when he starts to fidget, I need to let him take a break, or I need to, so I'm learning too. It's new to me, and
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's exactly. That's great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad I could also have the pleasure of saying hello. So,
hi, Scott.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you for being here. Another Estonian, as is Leo. So thank you for that. Tony, are you with us? I see the phone icon. Okay, Wilton, if you'd be kind enough to share your thoughts with us as well. Can't hear you.
Oh, you know what? You're muted. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you guys. It's actually a pleasure hearing these stories and actually understanding everybody's experience and what you guys are looking to do. I actually come from, I'll just give you a little background about me and why I got involved, why I'm involved here now. I come from education background. My whole family are educators, administrators, principals. I married a principal. So education is very important to us. You know, they're all fighting it now, trying to figure out ways to really, you know, make it, simplify it for their students. And for me, I was trying to figure out how I can fit, because I'm more of the rogue. I'm everybody in education, and I went the business route, right? So, you know, just trying to see how I could fit my experience into how I could help out now is what I'm trying to do. My background is in the early 80s. I moved from a city to a country where there was one station, and the only time I saw a black person was on the Cosby Show. So I was in a rural area, and so growing up like that, growing up in an area like that, there wasn't much to do, and we had to be very creative. And it was, you know, being the only black person in that part of the state, it wasn't easy. So I had to sort of put myself in a position to be around positive people, but also keep my mind focused on my education, because I knew education could get me out of where I was, and I knew that. So back then we didn't have the internet. If we did then, it was great, but I was always reading. I was diagnosed with dyslexia, so I was reading at a 3rd grade level in high school, but I knew how to beat the system because my sister was a fluent reader. So she would read it, and I would visualize it, and I would ace my test. So I knew how to do it. But understanding how I can help students get through this time of where they don't know what to do, and they don't know where to put their focus on, and they're trying to get out, but there's a lot of distractions. I had a lot of distractions growing up, and it wasn't as big as they are now because we didn't have the internet, but there was plenty of distractions and plenty of danger for me, and I sort of consumed myself in the vision of how I can get out of there, and I did. And when I did, people thought I was skilled and all blessed, but it was hard work, and it was determination. And I'm just trying to see how I can fit what I do in the education and the importance of your vision in what I can do for you guys. So I'm just here to be a fly on the wall and see how I can support you guys.
Well, thank you.
And also using my technology background now to bring that into what my background as well. So the technology part is I'm educating that part too. So knowing how students can use this is something I feel I can help out somewhere.
Thank you so much, Weldon.
Thank you for the contribution. Right now we're at 6:46 in the East. We had advertised that we would conclude the call at 7, but
no, we didn't. No.
Oh, I apologize.
It's 8 o'clock because there's so many people, but anybody can drop off anytime they want, but just continue.
Right. If anybody has to leave, we understand. So my apology for that. But with that, I'd like to bring on Manfred if he can hear us. Can you hear us, Manfred?
I'm sorry, Manfred.
You unmuted?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there he is.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I've been listening to everyone, and I've been involved in education for radical schooling, Summerhill, way back in the 60s, 70s, of course. My immediate thought is something that I'm reminded about from Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this, I do know that my circle of control is very small. My circle of influence is a little bit bigger, and everything else is out of my control or out of my influence. So, you know, my focus as a classroom teacher, because I taught in a very tough school where we had an 80% turnover rate. And that was a fantastic place to be. And what made us effective, and the teachers in that classroom so effective, was that we focused on what we could accomplish and let everything else that we had absolutely no control or even influence over, we had to let that go. That's the same thing, by the way, one of the reasons why I, in effect, started the whole entire homeschooling movement in the Eastern Coast here, along with John Holt, because I knew that, I was not able to change the education system. So I went outside of the system. And that is how I sort of got involved in all of this. And eventually I, helped form the Learning Community International. And so we work the same way today. We basically help one family at a time, and that's the best we can do. So I certainly am on board with everything everybody's saying. There are a lot of needs out there and so on. I would probably encourage all of you that I've been listening to continue to do what you're doing in your circle of influence and control to help what we can, to help whom you can help and where you can help, because that's the only thing we can really do. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Awesome.
Thank you for your
Beautifully said and
contribution.
effort. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Tatiana, please share with us your thoughts as well.
I have 2 points that I want to share, and a beautiful discussion so far. So I joined this conversation from a position of a scholar researcher in human and organizational development, and I did some work on creativity and inspiration, and I'm now focusing more on spiritual development, also mental health. So first point, I also want to build on what was already mentioned about supporting parents as much as kids, because we often talking about education focus on children needs, but we have a family as a system, and to have a balanced and healthy approach, like a total well-being approach, we need to address all parts of the system, and parents are often overwhelmed. I've seen this right now, even in my family and the people with whom I connected. Parents don't have enough resources to understand how to navigate this best, what resources are available, what approach may work best to connect with their kids. And sometimes these are kids of different age groups. I have one in elementary school and one in middle school, and those require completely different approaches. They are completely different personalities. So that is very important to consider. What are resources available for parents, or what resources we can make available or offer for parents in whatever capacity, and maybe in different fields. Maybe that they need some mental support or mental health resources. Maybe they need some educational resources, some psychological resources, whatever. I just cannot think of whatever this can be developed later. Another point that I don't think was covered yet is curriculum itself. And I put a name there. You can look this TED Talk. It's called "Do Schools Kill Creativity?" By Sir Ken Robinson, one of the most popular TED Talks. It's 65 million views so far, and it was published in 2006, which basically addressed the issue in schools that wasn't yet changed since 2006, and that was point that the curriculum was oriented on like industrial model, which only addressed our math skills and language skills most of the time, but forgot that skills, the creativity skills and imagination and dreaming and playfulness that all kids want to have and want to develop, and as kids. They're not adults like us. And I see this right now, and I see that my daughter, who is in elementary school, thankfully those teachers understand this, and they involve certain elements of play and fun in this online learning, and that I see produces much better results, and she's more engaged.
Yeah, you know, Tatiana, we're gonna stop right there. We got a 3-minute minute limit, but that is a key point we definitely want to pick up on, because if you think about the teachers now, you know, shifting over into a different level of teaching, parents have to learn the capabilities that teachers had to have in school, have to learn some capabilities at home that's going to be more suitable to their environment. So I love where you're going with that. Scott, can you pick up on the next guest?
Certainly. I also was asked to repeat the TED
question
speaker and the topic. It's "Do Schools Kill Creativity?" by Sir Ken Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, I'd like to go to Sir David Alto for his thoughts on how we can ensure that children have equitable access to online learning. David, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So, got some feedback. So I have a friend of ours and neighbor that's in higher ed, and we have 3 large school districts in our area. And she gave me some really good data yesterday. And don't worry, we were social distancing. She was like 20 feet away on my lawn, but 20 feet away. Anyway, only 22% of all the kids in our 3 school districts are turning in any type of homework. And in our school districts, everybody has a laptop or, you know, an iPad or whatever, and they have hotspots. So look, there's plenty of parents that, so a friend of that's a parent of a 12-year-old. And guess what? That 12-year-old, she says, you know, is going to have to worry about her schoolwork herself, because during the day, the parents got to work. Mm-hmm. So we got to get this right before the next school year, but there's going to be some hiccups. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that we're talking about this now, and everybody needs to talk about this now. But it's okay if we don't get it all right now, because we're not. We have, again, you know, we have kids that, you know, don't have access, and I understand that. But then we have yet 3 school districts here that have the access, have no excuses, but only 22% of people are turning in the work. And they're going to have pass fails. You know, how is a college going to take that pass fail when they have to have certain money print, whatever? So we're not going to solve everything, but we better get it right before the next school year when kids are going back to class, or if they do it or in different ways. So that's it. That's
I agree. That's beautiful.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
I know Darnell has to leave us at the top of the hour, but I just saw you making a gesture, and I see you've nodded your head quite a bit when we talk about parents and resources. I know you have to leave. Do you want to just leave us with a parting thought before you have to depart for the evening?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, I think everybody kind of stressed, you know, different points as far as parents, resources, coming around the whole family. So I'm excited that this conversation is starting. Illinois just declared that we're closed for the rest of the year. So, you know, everybody's grappling at different times with information as it's being rolled out. But like, you know, David just said, how do we proactively prepare to make sure kids don't have further gaps when we come back in the fall? I think that's the thing. If we're not proactive now, we'll spend all of next year
that's right
catching up. So this year is not a wash. It's not done with. We have work to do. We have families to support, so that as fewer kids as possible come back behind the 8 ball. And for, you know, it's already a gap in equity. We don't want to increase that gap because of lack of resources or lack of supervision. So there's no magic bullet, but we're all part of this answer. So I'm excited to continue this conversation.
Thank you
so much,
for the
Darnell.
opportunity.
Well said. Beautifully
Sorry you
said.
have to leave us, but we wanted to make sure you had a opportunity to say a few words before signing off. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Have a
you.
great weekend, everyone.
You too. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
All right.
Can Tony McKenzie hear me? Okay. So if not, what I'm going to do is have Ashwini join us, followed by Brandon. So Ashwini, please share with us your thoughts.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. Hi, everybody. So the perspective I'm coming from is a student. I have been a student for a really long time, multiple graduate degrees. And so where I come from is also I was a graduate teaching assistant in college. So that's my perspective. So the two things that I'm really passionate about that are really in line with what Carrie was saying is, one, what do we do to get immediate access to kids that we can to get some hardware in their hands, and also get some broadband internet in their hands, because the rural folks, the urban folks, you know, people can't afford it. So I think that's definitely something I'm supporting in terms of a short-term goal is, you know, maybe not everybody immediately, of course, but who can we get? And Sydney and I talked about sponsorships and things like that, so we can get devices into hands for folks and kids and homes that can't afford it. The second thing that I want to say is I think that, and I don't know if we have the skill set here yet, but for North America, and I'll speak for North America because I lived in both in Canada and the US, is that this is a governmental and legislation issue. And this is about lobbying for access. I think I saw in the chat, about No Child Left Behind in the United States. These things need to be either revamped or looked at or really pushed forward. Because for me personally, I'll be frank, is I think it needs to be legislation changes. It needs to be really like how we deliver internet. How do we get hardware to students? I think that we can try things here, but it's going to be at the governmental, federal, and state levels where change needs to happen, which will be lobbying. And again, I don't have that skill set, but I think it's something to consider.
Well
Thank
said.
you. Thank you very much. It is 7 o'clock, but we shall keep rolling along here. Brandon, welcome. And your thoughts, please.
Well, glad to be on the call. There's so much wisdom that's already been shared. I come from it from a standpoint of with my background being with administration and strategy, whether it be business or nonprofit. There's a lot of overlapping principles. A few things that I was thinking about is, and I'm thinking about it from us as this preliminary group that's going to plan to actually attack these issues. Right now, my wife and I, we have our 5-year-old niece, and it's a shock to the system because you go from the teachers handling the majority of the responsibilities and the parents more or less kind of buffeting that and helping reinforce it, to now it's switched. And so that by itself, along with your day-to-day work responsibilities, for the parents, I think even if they had the best of intentions, it's such a change in the relay race, so to speak, that it's just such a huge adjustment. So as an organization, if we were to form that entity, I would think we would look at the target audience, who we want to serve. There's so many areas that need to be serviced, but we can have a primary focus and then just scale it out. Because if we try to attack everything at once, we won't have anything that we can be great at first. And so we want to figure out what we can be great at first, because there's impoverished areas, then there's areas where they have all the technology, they have all the things in place, but for some reason, like it was stated earlier by David, 22% yet are still not, it's only 22% actually turning in assignments. So that there's so many variables as to why that may be happening. So we'd have to get a lot of data, but find out what we want to be great at first, expand. When you expand and you have a clear mission and vision, you can leverage that very easily in the market. You can get cell phone companies, you can get other nonprofits, because if it's a good initiative and they can see where the scale and the forecasting is going to go, they'll put their dollars behind it. And I would say we plan for it beyond just COVID. I mean, you make it to where this can be timeless for the next 30 years, and it can be versatile. We'll teach the school system how to make an adaptable, versatile platform that should have already been in place. So that's my thoughts.
It's beautiful.
Thank you, Brandon, and appreciate you being here this evening. With that, we're going to swing over to Chris Salem for your thoughts, please.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of my role as CEO and co-founder of Powered Fathers in Action. We're a 501c3 organization. I'm a firm believer, this is everybody's responsibility. It's not the schools, or it's not the state, it's not the government, it's everyone. And I'm a firm believer in terms of children's development, it starts in the home. And we have to look at, as parents, what we do each and every day with our behavior, not only what we say, but in terms of our behavior, what impact is that having on our children? Because certain things like that can also impact how our children are developing and learning as well. And not, just because a child is this way doesn't mean that we have to force them into something else that they're not. So I'm a firm believer that we need to adopt more of these values and principles, and allowing children to find that within themselves as observing their parents, and having parents make sure they address their own particular issues so that they can be better examples for their children. And this is what I call limited beliefs. So we're a firm believer, if parents are able to get to the root cause of their own limited beliefs from their own childhoods, and they can look at what they can change, they can be better examples in terms of their behavior, how they relate to their kids, learning to relate and understand versus to respond to them. And when children feel like they're related to and understood, and we can encourage them to then find, within themselves their own values and principles, they're going to gravitate towards things where they want to learn, things that are of interest to them. So it's not a cookie cutter system where you say, well, you got to do this, this, and this. You can't maybe change that in the school systems, but maybe looking for certain ways that we can encourage kids to, use critical thinking, problem solving, creativity in the areas that they have interest, and to encourage them to develop that and take ownership of it. And I'm a firm believer that it starts in the home, then the community, and then elsewhere. So it's a global responsibility, but we can't just rely upon our state governments, our national government. It's got to start in the home. We don't have to wait for someone else to fix it. We're too busy caught up in managing the problem rather than solving the problem and creating the solution. And if we're going to create a solution, we have to take ownership, each and every one of us, whether if we're parents, whether if we have a responsibility as a youth coach, a teacher, whatever the case may be, that we're doing these things to empower children to think for themselves so that we can position them to be better leaders in their homes, in their communities, and in their careers, businesses, whatever the case may be. So that's what I'm a firm believer that, again, when it comes to online learning, there could be a lot of things we can talk about, but let's have it start at the home level, but do it from a place of not that I'm telling you this is how it is, but encouraging the child to draw their own conclusion, what that means to them, and encouraging them to pursue the things that interest them.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Well said.
Appreciate it. You've been very patient, and I'd like to introduce Greg. Please share your thoughts with us.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks so much, and Sydney and Scott and everyone for pulling this together. It's interesting. My natural bent is I think strategy, I think strategic, I think big picture. And when I think about what is going on in the education system, there's a couple things that we're wrestling with here. I mean, there's an immediate need. In essence, there was a crisis that happened. That was schools shutting down, right? And since then, the school districts, across the country, they've been in a completely reactionary mode. They're just they need relief. They're just trying to stop the bleeding on what's happening. And in essence, that's what got us tied into Aransas Pass and the project with them. And so how do we alleviate these problems? I think, first of all, we need to work together to come up with a strategy, a way to help Aransas Pass, a way to help them just stop the bleeding. I mean, the school is 450 high school students. They have 12 laptops. They don't have Chromebooks. They don't have anything, right? And so, okay, what can we do in the immediate need to help them out, to help solve their problem? But beyond that, then you look into more like a relief phase and then a development phase. Whenever you have a situation like this, and then strategically, you really have to peel back the layers of the onion and really get to the root problem. And the root problem in education in the United States, for the most part, is it comes down to I could tell you, it's a lot of it is inequality in school funding. I mean, that is a huge issue. You have schools that have every bell and whistle under the sun. You have schools that, they're struggling. I led a team one time into the inner cities of New Orleans, pre-Katrina, and they were talking about education. And I think it was in the 5th ward or the 9th ward. The high school there in the cafeteria, they would go in every morning and clean up bat guano. How's that? I mean, that's an environment. How can learning take place in that environment? Charlotte, where I live, there are areas of Charlotte that are 98 to 99% of the homes have internet access. There are neighborhoods in Charlotte that less than 45% have internet access. It's not a level playing field. And so we have to look, like I said, at the micro, right, the immediate issues, but then we have to take and expand and really peel, like I said earlier, peel back the layers of the onion and really begin to understand what are the systematic issues that exist, right, that are creating this disparity. And it doesn't matter if it's rural and urban, it doesn't matter what it is, but we have to at least admit that there's a problem before we decide we want to move forward and try to solve a problem. So anyhow, so that's all I have to say on this. It has been great listening to people, and some folks have shared some great wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. We're at 7:08, moving along very nicely. Jeff, who's up next, thank you again for your patience, and if you'd be kind enough, close us out with this question.
Well, let me start by just saying what an honor it's been. And boy, this is tough to kind of take if I'm the end or close to the end, but it's been a truly amazing time sitting here and listening to everybody and the wisdom across the board. And so many of you hit on my points that I wanted to bring up. But I think one thing that for me, and I'll give you a little bit of my background, but we're in unprecedented and difficult times right now. This is something none of us have ever seen in our lifetime. Hopefully we'll never see again. We're worrying about our health. We're worrying about our jobs. We're worrying about money. And now a lot of us are worrying about having our children at home and having to deal with their education. So a little bit about me. I have and still do homeschool my children. I've homeschooled for 20 years. I have a 21-year-old who's in college, Arizona State University. And about a month or two ago, they went to completely online. So she's now an online student. I have an 18-year-old who's a senior in high school. So she's finishing homeschooling as a senior, also taking college classes. That is all converted to online. And I have a 7-year-old. I have a second grader who, I have to say, we don't do a lot online. It's a lot of books and coloring and reading and handwriting and things of that nature. So, and I think it was Leo earlier, I don't know if he's still on the call, who homeschools. So this hasn't been a big culture shift for me. My wife is a professor at Arizona State University and teaches online. So the only real life that's been uprooted has been mine, now having to work from home for the last 6 weeks. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of my coworkers and a lot of this panel and a lot of things I've seen online are the parents that are struggling with now having to work and educate their children at the same time and / entertain their children. And they're different from all walks of life. You know, I don't want to minimize anything by saying this has been the great equalizer, but these are people from, you know, apartments, big houses, the country, tight neighborhoods, inner city, one child, 2 or more children, teenagers, toddlers. Everybody's circumstances are unique. This is affecting everybody. But there's common challenges for all of us. And for me to think about, you know, what's the right thing for these people to do? Do they follow the school's curriculum? Do they try to come up with their own activities? Do they try to allow online time if they have the internet? Games, outside games, creative projects. And once you answer those questions, how do you implement? You know, a lot of people aren't trained teachers. I have the luxury of having done this a long time and learned some tricks, and I'm still Googling and yet YouTubing things to try to stay one step ahead of my kids at all times. But most people will tell you they know their children very well. They just don't know how to educate them very well. But there's resources, and I think parents, and I think it was Darnell earlier, I've taken so many notes, and you all hit on this, but supporting the parents, I think, is going to be paramount in this, and that they need to know that there's a community of people that are willing to give them whatever resources they have. We've been printing out coloring pages for people in the neighborhood that there's a public school right down the street. We've been printing out coloring pages to give to other families, writing exercises, any old books we have, we're sharing those and printing copies and giving things out just to help these families who are at a overnight total loss on how to do this. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, but I think this is a great panel, and I so appreciate everyone that has spent time on this. And I'm actually looking forward to watching this video that we're recording again later and taking more notes. And hopefully we all do that and we can really hone in on, you know, I don't want to burst any bubbles, but there are so many angles to come at this. I think I emailed Sydney earlier today and said that I'm on a new committee at my work. My work is 1,500 people globally. And we've actually started a committee to help parents who in about a month, when school would normally be over and parents are hoping to go back to work, and now parents are finding out that all of the summer activities are over, canceled, probably soccer and horses and basketball, whatever. And now the parents are like, well, when I come back to work in a month, what do I do with my kids then? That their activities are canceled. So that's a whole new thing at my work. It's like, okay, we need to address that now. It give us maybe 6 weeks to come up with support for parents who hopefully come back to work, but kids are home with no activities, and there's so many things this is affecting that it's almost mind-boggling and mind-numbing. But thank you,
Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you so
for
much, Jeff.
that.
Really appreciate
Sydney,
it.
Sydney, let me turn it back to you for a moment, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. A lot has been said, and there's a lot of different angles, a lot of different, moving parts to this problem. And no matter how we try to approach it, there's always going to be an angle we have to come at first in order to have an 80-20 impact, or at least bring everything to an even level playing field so that everybody at least have some level of access so we can really get things started. Because if you think about it, there is a lot of education that needs to happen. Education with parents, education with teachers as well, because teachers are used to operating in an environment that's at school and used to operating with a lot of paper, or at least some of the tools that they've been using that are antiquated. And so getting them used to actually producing new content, even producing authentic content from themselves to empower their students. And so there's so many different levels, as well as coming directly to students and giving them leadership capabilities and ability to lead themselves and to be creative and use their own level of capability, as Chris so eloquently put, that we all have a tailored amount of skill sets and abilities that can be brought out of us due to our environment, our home. It starts there. And facilitating all those basic needs, as Coach Russ so eloquently stated, that Maslow's chart is real. You really have to address a lot of those factors. But I think the wave of information actually is there for us to leverage, for us to basically be able to educate in the environment of the home, be able to reach out and touch, be able to survey, to be able to have a level of measurement and accountability to say, you know what, we are aware of the conditions, at least, of a child. If we can at least be aware of their conditions, then we can start there. If we're not even aware of their conditions, then it's going to be very difficult for us to help any child. And I think we start there with the level of awareness, capture that data, capture that information, so we can allow that to drive the initiative moving forward. So we're acting on something that's measurable and actionable. So that's from my perspective. I thank you all for coming to this session. It's been great. I know we wanted to do some action items, but a lot of folks are not here. So what I'm thinking is we can schedule a separate call to actually run through some action items. We go back and reflect. Maybe we send out some notes. I can send out some key notes of what was said. And, and we can take that, meditate on it, and then have another meeting and come up with some action items that we think make sense to at least start gathering information and having things that we can actually use and leverage for us to take action.
Sydney, that can be just a follow-up for next week. We've been doing this for 4 weeks now, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good idea.
Next week, have a week to do it and then come back with some action items, because I'm seeing like different pillars, right?
Yeah.
Government, family, digital. So I think we could come up with the pillars that need to happen and then get some roles and responsibilities towards what Greg's saying, right? Building that skeleton and then filling in what needs to get done for actual work to be done and impact.
Yes, beautifully said.
One more thing, Sydney. We also have to touch on the kids teaching their parents, as in your case, with the aids and the boxes and all that.
Yeah,
right?
So true. Yes.
So
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Next week is perfect for us to open that up a little bit further so we can start making sense out of what we've delivered here with all our different perspectives. So excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there's one little piece of information that I want to mention about Google for Education. Sorry, I couldn't keep it back, is that it's completely free. So if you guys, I know that there's a huge issue with disparity in learning environments and access to technology. So if you have experience with a school district that doesn't have any sort of like technology access and they don't have anything going on, that is something that they have, is that it is a completely free offering by Google to support students. And that's the Google Apps for Education. Obviously the Chromebooks are not, there is a price to that, but in terms of the learning and the education out there to encourage these students to continue their learning at home, that's there for them. And that's a worldwide platform too. That's not just US or anything like that.
I also to thank you, Alex. I just want to add in that for those of us on the call, whether here now or join us at some point tonight, please check out people's LinkedIn profiles and connect with them so that we have an ability to create this community and people will know each other, what they do for a living, and maybe some other information you might glean from their profile. So please take a moment to do that. Everyone's name should be on the group list that Sydney has put out. So everyone should have access to everyone's name so they can follow up after this call.
Can I say something, Sydney?
Of course, please.
I just wanted to say, I actually homeschooled all my kids too. I have 3. My oldest is almost 40. And so when we were homeschooling, there was no internet. There was no, online access like that. And in the state of Maryland, we were definitely kind of pioneers in creating the wheel. So along with Manfred Smith, what we did is we trained our advisors. We had advisors that oversaw and worked with all the homeschoolers. So for over 35 years, we've been kind of culling that and that training, and we've used a lot of professionals, a lot of things that Christopher said, Tatiana said, Dimitri said about different kinds of empowerment, personal accountability, lifelong learning, belief in yourself, time management, all of that. And what we've done is train those advisors to actually empower the parents to empower their kids. So what I just did in lieu of all that was going on, I created something called the Navigator Program. And this was specifically consulting services directly to the parents who've been impacted by the school closing. And the Learning Community is a nonprofit. And so what I'm trying to do is get financing for that. So parents, especially those who don't have the finances to have those consulting services, because I want to pay my advisors. So we are a nonprofit. If I could get that financed, and we could really, help a lot of people. Right now, I'm trying to get the word out there. It's the Navigator. What I'd like to do is just email you what that description is, and you can push that out among other people. And see, again, I'm getting my web guy to try to put a donate button. So sponsor a family as much as you can so we can get some of those empowering services out to the parents to empower their kids. So
And is that just consulting, or is there an actual, any sort of offer that goes along with that to support the kids' learning, or is it just kind of training and empowering parents and teaching them?
It's actually addressing. So if they're already, having some kind of learning plan from their current schools that they're in, sometimes the parents have that, and then maybe they can do something with that for a couple of hours, but what about the rest of the day? So what are the things we focus on? Kids, not only kids' interests and what they're curious, but what's their learning proclivities? What's their learning preferences? And we're talking about much more out of the box kind of learning, not just giving them more resources, but actually addressing the kids' needs and try to create a learning plan that's intrinsically motivating, inciting, even bring the kids on board to collaborate. Once kids collaborate and put their mark on it, they're more motivated to do those kinds of things. So yes, it has both. We're also including an online resource, it's called ETAP, Educational and Teachers Assistance Program, free of charge, just as a resource. Again, my advisors are so steeped in online resources, but we don't want to just throw a lot of resources at them. They can just Google that. But it's really about how to leverage those, and if they're the right resources for those students, and helping them actually write a plan for their day, helping them schedule, prioritize, and plan.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We'll be taking a look at a lot of different perspectives. You have, I'm sure, some experience, and we'll be taking a collective perspective so that we can really have a wider view, right, of everything. So I think that's where we're going to begin. And next week's call, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that as well.
Sounds great. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Any last words for this evening?
I think that's it, guys. We're going to close out. It's a long one. Let's do it.
Thank you.
All right.
Actually, I have one more.
Yes, yes, Nancy, go right ahead.
Just that even adversity really makes us rise to the occasion, and I see silver linings all over the place.
Likewise.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's make it happen.
Certainly appreciate you spending a part of your Friday night with us, and look forward to some follow-up and another great conversation next week. We thank you all. Be healthy, be safe, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.